Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. The U.S. sinking 7 Iranian boats as Iran launches attacks in the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump threatening to blow up Iran if Iran targets U.S. vessels. The latest on the Middle East. Spirit Airlines suddenly shuts down operations, grounding all flights this weekend. What stranded passengers need to know, and how major airlines are stepping in to help. A nationwide redistricting battle intensifies. Alabama and Tennessee move to redraw congressional maps, a shift that could add more Republican seats. What it means for the balance of power. The suspect accused in the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting makes a new request in court asking to be removed from suicide precautions as prosecutors lay out new details about the attack. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani is hospitalized and in critical condition. What we know so far and how President Trump is reacting. 2 U.S. service members are honored for their actions during a deadly shooting near the White House. What happened that day and the recognition they're receiving now.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon and thank you for joining us. The U.S. destroyed 7 Iranian small boats as they attempted to interfere with fresh U.S. efforts to guide ships through the Strait of Hormuz. The president now delivering a stern warning to Iran as the prospect of a peace deal remains unclear. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Iris, good afternoon. What is the latest on the Middle East?
Good afternoon to you as well. So this morning, as the U.S. now starts to really protect and guide commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz using its military might, President Trump moments ago announcing that Iran has, quote, taken some shots at unrelated nations with respect to the ship movement, Project Freedom, including a South Korean cargo ship. In response, the president says that we have shot down 7 small boats, or as they like to call them, fast boats. It's all they have left. And while President Trump knows that so far there's no further damage except for that one South Korean boat in the Strait of Hormuz due to Iran, tensions are flaring as Central Command announcing this morning that Iran did try to launch an attack at both commercial as well as military vessels of the U.S. Here's Brad Cooper from the Central Command talking about it this morning. Watch.
Cruise missiles were going after both U.S. Navy ships, but mostly after commercial shipping. We defended both ourselves and, consistent with our commitment, we defended all the commercial ships. We've had drone launches against commercial ships, all of which were defended against, consistent with our commitment. And then the small boats were all going against commercial ships, and all were sunk by Apaches and Seahawk helicopters.
And it all comes President Trump this morning in an interview with Fox delivers a fresh warning to the Iranian regime, saying that they will be, quote, blown off the face of earth if it attacks U.S. ships escorting vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. As we know, that our president announced over the weekend that starting this morning, Project Freedom will begin as the U.S. really launches this humanitarian effort, as they call it, to help ships that were stuck in that key waterway to get out of the strait and go on to do their business as usual. Central Command announcing also this morning that as a first step, so far 2 U.S.-flagged commercial ships have successfully transited through that key waterway due to Project Freedom, and the Trump administration saying that is for the good of both Iran, the Middle East, as well as for the U.S. Meanwhile, what's involved, though, is heavy military force, including 15,000 service members of the U.S. and over 100 land and sea-based aircraft, as well as guide missile destroyers. And this morning, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying that the U.S. has absolute control of the Hormuz Strait, and also that the free flow of ships may take weeks or a month to be fully restored. The secretary also calling out China for their role in supporting the Iranian regime, as well as both during this war as well as throughout the past few decades. Watch.
Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism, and China has been buying 90% of their energy, so they are funding the largest state sponsor of terrorism. But more importantly, Iran, the threat of attacks from Iran has closed the strait. We are reopening it, so I would urge the Chinese to join us in supporting this international operation. You know, there are things moving through the UN that China and Russia have blocked.
And in addition to squeezes the Iranian regime really both economically and militarily, the Secretary of Treasury says that they're also targeting anyone around the globe who might be trying to transmit money to the Iranian regime illicitly. And of course, it comes as President Trump is slated to speak later today at the White House during a small business roundtable where questions might be asked again on Iran. Back to you.
Okay, Iris, thank you. Meanwhile, breaking just now, Iran launching strikes targeting the UAE today. Officials say the attack hit the Fujairah oil export zone. According to the UK Maritime Trade Operations, a cargo ship was spotted on fire off the coast of the UAE as it warns of Iranian attacks. Fujairah media office confirmed the occurrence of fire that was caused by a drone that was launched from Iran. The office says security teams responded immediately and they are still working to control the situation. There was no immediate comment from Iran. In a social media post, the UAE Ministry of Defense reported detecting 4 Iranian cruise missiles, successfully intercepting 3 over territorial waters, while the 4th fell into the sea. This appears to be the first reported Iranian missile attack on the UAE since the US-Iran ceasefire took effect last month. We'll keep you updated on the situation as it develops. And the United Arab Emirates says it's in talks with the United States over a potential currency swap line. The country's trade minister says the discussions place the UAE among a small elite group of countries the U.S. is considering for such arrangements. Currency swap lines allow central banks to access each other's currencies directly. That reduces cost and exchange rate risks in cross-border transactions. The Federal Reserve currently maintains permanent swap lines with 5 major central banks, including those in Europe, Japan, and Canada. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said last month several Gulf and Asian allies had requested similar arrangements. Major airlines are stepping in to help stranded passengers after Spirit Airlines abruptly shut down operations. The budget carrier grounding all flights this weekend, leaving travelers scrambling for a way to get to where they need to go. Here's more on that story.
The nation's largest ultra-low-cost airline has shut down operations, leaving passengers scrambling and thousands of workers impacted. On Saturday, Spirit Airlines saying it ceased operations effective immediately, canceling all flights and telling customers not to go to the airport.
This morning at 3 a.m., Spirit Airlines ceased operations. So what that means is Spirit does not have airplanes in the air flying as of this morning. Also, their call centers are closed and they don't have staff at ticket counters. So if you have a flight scheduled with Spirit Airlines, don't show up at the airport. There will be no one here to assist you.
Major carriers are now stepping in, offering cap fares and discounts for stranded Spirit passengers.
If you're a customer, many of the airlines that are not Spirit are stepping up to provide you assistance. So United, Delta, JetBlue, and Southwest are capping their ticket prices for Spirit customers.
Spirit blames a sharp rise in fuel costs for forcing the shutdown after months of financial struggles. This announcement coming less than a day after President Trump said he delivered a final proposal in an attempt to keep the airline from folding. Secretary Duffy saying the airline has faced prolonged financial issues, including being in bankruptcy since last summer and having attempted to restructure earlier this year, pushing back against claims the shutdown was caused by rising oil costs linked to the operation in Iran.
So Spirit was in dire straits long before the war with Iran. Multiple times they had filed for bankruptcy. Their model wasn't working. They couldn't get to fiscal health. So this was not the impetus. The war was not the impetus for Spirit.
The collapse is also drawing political reaction over a previously blocked merger and the airline's long-term viability.
And at the time, the Biden and Buttigieg DOJ bragged and said as they canceled the option for this merger, that this was a victory for U.S. travelers who deserve lower prices and better choices. Now, many at the time said this was a disaster. This merger should have been allowed.
Passengers are now being advised to seek refunds through credit card companies or bankruptcy claims, a process that could take time and may only result in partial repayment.
To talk about Spirit Airlines shutdown, joining us now is Jen Ruiz, travel blogger, author, and Instagram travel content creator. Jen, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Can I just ask you, what do you think will be the impact on the industry? Does the shutdown mean less competition, one less company?
It certainly does in the short term, and we're seeing the impact of that already with other flights now being inundated with demand. We have these temporary price caps, but we're seeing these summer prices go through the roof. We're seeing airlines move to try to compensate by raising prices on other things, now taking away benefits like food or beverage. So we're definitely seeing the effect of having less competition. We're seeing it at a time when summer travel is already really inundated with difficulties this year, and ultimately the impact that it will have is on the ability for people to travel more, right? This was an airline that allowed people to visit their family at the last minute, to travel. I'm from Puerto Rico, and they had really affordable flights to Puerto Rico, and so this definitely impacts people who relied on it as an affordable route.
Okay, then does that mean moving forward we may potentially see lower passenger volume? Is that going to be an issue? And what does it mean for budget travelers?
We're seeing some of that already. We've seen some commentary that, planes are empty, that people don't necessarily have the money to fly. And if that's the case, then we're going to try to see airlines make up for that in the other places. Like I mentioned, luggage fees, taking away benefits. But ultimately, it depends. It could be that they're shutting down routes that aren't as profitable. So maybe a route that doesn't get flown often now, you have these kind of stranded areas where you would previously have a lesser known carrier that would access it or provide at least one flight a day. Maybe now you're going to see flights limited to these major hubs, New York City, Chicago, and that it's going to be harder to get to these other, remote regional airports.
Okay, can I just get your opinion on this? Do you think it was the right move for the government to not purchase Spirit, or do you think they maybe should have?
I think we all wanted to see Spirit win, right? It's been a heartbreaking weekend seeing the posts from airline members, from pilots. There was the pilot who had his last flight and unfortunately had to come back on a different airline, and they were able to give him a water salute. So it's been really sad to see people who have put in, decades. Broward, I'm here in Florida, and they had invested a lot of money into development in Broward, into, jobs in Broward County. So it's a loss for the aviation community. And I think that we all would have wanted to see a resolution that involves Spirit being able to continue. They certainly had, an impressive safety record. And for what I mentioned, as much as people maybe weren't pleased with the lack of amenities or, maybe tardiness of flights, there was always, Spirit got you to where you needed to go. And it got you there in one piece, and it got you there for a price that most people could afford. And so it really is a loss to see this, airline go under like this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is a loss. But what are the alternatives? Are there any alternatives now that Spirit is gone?
Certainly. So there are still a lot of budget airlines that consumers can look to. My parents had a flight with Spirit that they were going to take this weekend. They were able to get a refund right away, and they were able to rebook the day prior because, as I mentioned, they had initially booked that flight with Spirit because it was the only nonstop flight available to this more remote airport. And so they had to go now a day earlier to find an alternative flight. They're going to be going with Frontier Airlines, which is an alternative budget airline, Avilo. Definitely, there are budget airlines available, but Spirit was one that had so many routes and so many routes to cities that I think were underserviced at times. And so I think that it's going to be difficult to find alternatives. You certainly can go the route of buying, basic economy fares, looking to utilize points and miles. There are limited times kind of caps on fares now that they have been put into place with the rescue attempts. So you can look to see if you can find any deals. My parents' flight that I mentioned, it was pretty reasonable under the $200 cap that they had had for that one way each person. And so there are alternatives available, but as always, when you're working with a budget carrier, you have to allot for the different things that you're going to add to that ticket, right? So maybe what looks to be affordable right off the bat could end up being more than what you anticipated it to be.
Right. Okay. So Jen, what do you think? What is your opinion on this? Are you worried or have any concerns at all about the future of budget airlines? Where do you stand on that?
It's really hard to say because budget airlines are so important to the way that we travel today, but we have seen the loss of budget airlines over time, right? Like, for instance, I previously flew $99 to Iceland with WOW Air, which has since gone defunct. But it seems that whenever a budget airline goes under, a new one comes up. Right now, there's all these new European budget airlines as well, Condor, Play Air, right? Following a similar model. And so I think with aviation, I don't think that we're necessarily going to see the loss of budget airlines completely. What I think we've seen is the introduction of budget airlines affecting how legacy carriers operate, where now they have, before, when you used to have a seat that was included, you used to have the meal included, you used to have the checked bag included, and now we've seen that major carriers have mimicked the model of the budget airline in order to stay competitive. So I don't think they're going anywhere, but I do think that they do tend to fluctuate. They can have, a start and end date, a lifespan that's shorter than what you would expect of other airlines. So it's not something that I would stop flying budget airlines, but I would be very aware of the news. For instance, if I would, knowing this about Spirit, I personally did not book any Spirit flights if I could avoid it because I was concerned that this would be an issue. So I would just kind of keep my ear to the ground, see what's going on in aviation. And if an airline is starting to experience those problems, which they mentioned Spirit has been for some time now, just be wary about your bookings. Maybe book with points and miles, which are a little bit more disposable than cash flow, but they are still worth something. So just be careful when booking with budget airlines.
Right. It's assuring that you say you don't see budget airlines going anywhere because I'm all for competition and choice, right? Just one last question here, Jen. If a customer has a ticket for a future Spirit flight, what are their options right now?
So you do have a lot of people that have already been getting refunds. As I mentioned, for my parents, it was automatic and they were able to get that refund. So if you don't have some kind of correspondence already, I would move as soon as possible to address where it is that you paid for the ticket with. So if you booked through a third-party provider like Expedia, reach out to them, see if your refund is in process, see what's happening there. Go through that method first of trying to get it refunded from wherever you booked it. If it was through Spirit, it should be an easy refund. Otherwise, you can contest it with your credit card, but everybody knows what's happening, so there should be procedures in place to be able to get you your money back. And then try to make sure that you take advantage of these rescue fares, of these fare caps, of these limited time offers from other airlines that are trying to step up and assist, because most of them are really only valid through the end of this week. So you would need to rebook as soon as possible. And then there'll be maybe for flights a few months out to November or so. But you definitely want to do that sooner rather than later, especially knowing that a lot of people are trying to do the same.
Well, all right, Jen, thank you for all the tips today. Good to speak with you.
Likewise.
Still ahead, a growing fight over congressional maps. New moves in multiple states could reshape the House and trigger pushback from Democrats. Stay tuned.
The 8th NTD International Piano Competition welcomes distinguished pianists from around the world, celebrating the depth, discipline, and expressive power of the Baroque, classical, and romantic repertoire. September 1st through the 5th, 2026, New York City. Apply at piano.ntdtv.com, honoring the timeless tradition of the piano.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. see.
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Abused youth often feel safer on the street. Now, more than ever, that's the most dangerous place of all. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming, and no young person is ever turned away. Please call or go online now with your gift of $19 a month to help a young person. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Your gift will show them they're loved. Homeless young people are afraid and alone with nowhere else to turn.
You want to know that there's somewhere you can go that's safe. So the Covenant House did that for us.
Please call now with your gift of $19 a month. We'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. Please don't wait. Your gift is the lifeline a young person needs now. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org. Thank you for saving precious lives.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new.
A new request from the suspect accused of trying to assassinate President Trump. His attorneys are asking the judge to remove him from suicide precautions while in jail. Officials say Cole Thomas Allen stormed a security checkpoint and fired a shotgun outside the White House Correspondents' Dinner last weekend. Allen was assigned a safe cell when first booked into the jail facility. He was then downgraded to suicide precautions. That means Allen can receive visits from his legal team, but can't make phone calls or spend time outside his cell. Meanwhile, U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro says the Secret Service agent who was struck was definitely shot by Allen.
It is definitively his bullet. He hit at that Secret Service agent. He had every intention to kill him and anyone who got in his way.
Allen is charged with attempted assassination, discharging a firearm during a crime of violence, and illegally transporting guns and ammunition across state lines. He has pleaded, not entered a plea just yet. The Supreme Court has upheld a federal rule allowing the abortion pill to be prescribed through telemedicine and sent by mail. The ruling temporarily lifts an appellate court decision limiting access to the drug nationwide. The Supreme Court's administrative stay gives the justices more time to review emergency requests by 2 manufacturers of mifepristone. The Food and Drug Administration eased access to the drug in 2023. In 2024, the High Court rejected a challenge brought by anti-abortion groups and doctors to roll back the FDA regulations. The case follows the court's 2022 decision overturning the Roe v. Wade precedent that had legalized abortion nationwide. Since then, several states have effectively banned or limited access to abortion. Now, the latest on the nationwide redistricting battle, Alabama and Tennessee are moving to redraw their congressional maps. The 2 states could yield 3 more GOP seats. Here's more.
Following the Supreme Court's ruling that race-based districts are unconstitutional, 2 more GOP-led states are moving to remake their maps. Alabama currently has 2 majority black districts. A lower court previously forced the state to add a 2nd district with a substantial number of black voters. Both seats held by Democrats could be carved up after the High Court's ruling.
Alabama is a conservative state, and they deserve conservative representation. I'm going to do everything in my power to give the legislature an opportunity to draw 7 congressional Republican districts.
The governor called a special legislative session starting today. Alabama's primary elections are on May 19th. Meanwhile, Tennessee's primaries are underway this week. At the same time, a special session is set to start tomorrow. Governor Bill Lee says legislators must ensure districts accurately reflect the will of Tennessee voters. President Trump previously urged the governor to push hard to carve up the sole Democrat-held district in Memphis. Democrats across the nation pushing back. New Jersey could be the next blue state to try to counter GOP gains.
New Jersey is going to stand up so that we can create, a counterbalance to whatever he's doing.
And a new map in Florida is awaiting Governor DeSantis' signature. It could lead to 4 more Republican seats in Congress, but also faces legal challenges from Democrats. Other states are already eyeing changes for the 2028 elections. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
The Justice Department is going to announce a settlement with the meatpacking industry later this week. Here's Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche today providing updates on his department's antitrust probe into meatpackers.
We prioritized investigating potential antitrust violations in U.S. cattle and beef markets. In the beef industry, the big 4 processors control over 85% of the beef processing market. 2 of the big 4 are primarily foreign-owned. Multiple plant closures across the country, the current market structure, and high concentration in the industry indicate anti-competitive activity.
The DOJ says the settlement will be historic and directly affect the prices of proteins like chicken, pork, and turkey. The antitrust probe comes after President Trump asked the department to investigate the prices of beef. Blanche says since then, his department has reviewed over 3 million documents and contacted hundreds of industry participants, including ranchers, cattlemen, producers, and processors. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins notes 2 of the top 4 meatpackers are Brazilian-owned. She says this makes them a threat not just to U.S. cattle producers, but also to America itself. The DOJ says it will use every tool available to help reduce food prices and ensure a fair playing field in the agricultural industry. An illness spreading on a cruise ship in the Atlantic is raising alarms. Health officials suspect it may be an outbreak of the hantavirus. The 3rd person who died from the outbreak was a German national. A spokesperson for ship owner Oceanwide Expeditions issued a statement today. It said the hantavirus had so far only been confirmed in the case of a British man being treated in South Africa. The ship is currently anchored in front of Cape Verde. Medics were working to evacuate 2 people with symptoms of the deadly hantavirus. Around 150 people were still stuck on the vessel after 3 people, a Dutch couple and a German national, died and others fell ill. The World Health Organization said the risk to the wider public was low from the disease. A passenger on board the cruise ship shares his thoughts.
I normally wouldn't make a video like this, but I feel like I need to say something, so I wrote a few things down. I am currently on board the MV Hondius, and what's happening right now is very real for all of us here. We're not just a story. We're not just headlines. We're people. People with families, with lives, with people waiting for us at home. There's a lot of uncertainty, and that's the hardest part. All we want right now is to feel safe, to have clarity, and to get home.
Hantavirus can cause fatal respiratory illness. It's spread when droppings and urine of rodents become airborne. There are no specific drugs to treat the disease, so treatment focuses on supportive care. That can include putting patients on ventilators in severe cases. Hantavirus usually begins with flu-like symptoms such as fatigue and fever 1 to 8 weeks after exposure. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani is hospitalized and in critical condition. That's according to his spokesperson, who says Giuliani is stable. His spokesperson says Giuliani is recovering from pneumonia and breathing on his own now. He adds that the former mayor has restrictive airway disease due to 9/11, which adds complications to any respiratory illness. Giuliani at one point required medical ventilation to maintain inadequate oxygen and stabilize his condition. President Trump reacting on social media, calling Giuliani a true warrior and praising his work. Giuliani served as New York City mayor from 1994 to 2001 and was widely praised for his response to the September 11 attacks. He later served as a personal attorney to President Trump and faced legal challenges tied to his claims about the 2020 election. Caught on camera, a frightening moment involving a United Airlines flight approaching Newark Liberty International Airport. Investigators say the jet struck a light pole while crossing over the New Jersey Turnpike during landing. Here's more on what happened.
A preliminary report shows a tire from the plane's landing gear hit the streetlight, then hit a tractor trailer. Police say the driver suffered non-life-threatening injuries, and the falling pole also struck a Jeep traveling on the roadway. Despite the impact, the aircraft landed safely with more than 200 passengers and crew on board. United says workers will examine the plane for any damage. And the National Transportation Safety Board says an investigator is scheduled to arrive in Newark today. The agency says it has directed United Airlines to provide both the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder to support the investigation. A preliminary report is expected within 30 days.
President Trump's nominee for Fed Chair Kevin Warsh moves to the full Senate for a final vote expected on the week of May 11th. We discuss this with an analyst after the break.
My 15-year-old son, Ethan, and I had a fun and relaxing morning. We returned home, and Ethan walked to his best friend's house an hour later. I heard the ambulance scream by the street, carrying my beautiful boy. Ethan was shot in the head in his best friend's house with an unsecured gun. He had zero chance of survival. The father, the gun owner, he stored his 3 guns and bullets in a shoebox.
How do you feel?
That has to be the most horrific experience that a human could ever have.
David, would you give any advice?
First thing you do is not keep your ammunition with your weapons, and that your weapons need to be locked at all times.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanted to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
I am so glad you ladies are here. You each have your own rooms.
Thank you.
Get settled in. I'll call you for dinner. Adopting teen sisters, it's a lot. Girls, you're gonna be late. You want breakfast?
No thanks, we're good.
They're always in their own world.
What'd you get there?
Twice the work. Twice the surprises.
Just try it.
But if you think of it that way, they're also twice as fulfilling.
I think you should ask her yourself.
Is it okay to call you Mom?
Of course you can.
President Trump's nominee for Fed Chair Kevin Warsh moves to the full Senate for a final vote expected on the week of May 11th. Joining us now to discuss is Daniel Lacalle, Chief Economist at Tressis, international financial analyst and author of the book, The New Global Economic Order. So Daniel, good afternoon. Hope you had a great weekend. So first question I want to ask you, what is the state of the Federal Reserve that Kevin Warsh is inheriting, and what do you think he's going to bring to the table?
Thank you very much. I think that the state is one in which the general feeling is that the Federal Reserve has made some very drastic policy mistakes in the past 5 years. first by saying that inflation was transitory in 2021, then by hiking rates way too fast, and then by cutting rates in the middle of an election process, which wasn't required. So there's been a lot of concerns about the lack of interpretation of monetary aggregates from the Federal Reserve. It is not paying attention to the growth in money supply and to the situation of government spending and government deficits. So that's what he is inheriting. I think that his big challenge is to fulfill the mandate. We must remember that the Fed now is not maintaining its mandate. It's not fulfilling it because the information coming from their own beige books is saying that small and medium enterprises are losing the opportunities of job creation, that job creation has been slowing down because of elevated rates, and they have not cut rates. No? So I think that his position is going to be important. They need to fulfill a dual mandate, which is jobs and inflation. And those two elements need to be taken into account with the same level of care and with the same level of concern.
Okay, so if Kevin Warsh is confirmed, what would you say would be the biggest difference between him and Jerome Powell in terms of approach?
In my opinion, I think that what he is going to bring to the table is to be really data dependent. One of the frustrating things about the tenure of Mr. Powell was that he always said that they were going to be very data dependent and that they were going to be very detailed, focused on those elements that would generate elevated prices, etc. However, they moved from narrative to narrative instead of paying attention to the data as it was published. When inflation was coming down at the beginning of 2025 and throughout 2025, they kept a rhetoric about tariff impact on inflation that never happened. And obviously, what they need to do now is to go back to be data dependent, which will be welcome by markets as well, because then we don't have to interpret all the time what they say versus what they do.
Okay, so if the Fed becomes more data dependent, do you expect Kevin Warsh to be on the leanings of more rate cuts? Or do you think maybe we won't get as much rate cuts as we want because he's only one person and the Fed chair only gets one vote?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think he's going to decide, obviously, how many rate cuts we're going to get or if we will have any rate cuts. I believe that we will have rate cuts simply because the shift of one person brings more numbers, more people within the Federal Reserve that are truly data dependent, and therefore the majority is going to probably lean to look at how much job creation are we getting. Is the job creation as strong as other economic indicators are showing? Are the beige books showing the reality of the labor market, or are there weaknesses happening? And at the same time, the importance of having a policy that is focused on the measures of inflation that they have always focused on, the core PCE and the core elements of inflation, not the volatile elements that come because of energy prices and temporary factors like what's going on right now in the Strait of Hormuz.
Okay, so what is your reaction to Jerome Powell saying that he's going to stay on the Board of Governors after he steps down as chair? Is it a bit unusual? What's your reaction?
My opinion is that it is quite unusual because it makes no sense. It's almost like a stubborn kind of reaction that in which he wants to sort of prove that he is going to stay regardless of the situation that has been so uncomfortable for market participants and for members of the Fed since at least a year ago. We must remember as well that somebody as important as the chair of the Federal Reserve must be humble enough to at least admit that they have failed, that they have not fulfilled their mandate, that they made very significant mistakes in 2020, in 2021, in 2024. This is something that is not a problem. They need to be aware that it was an absolute atrocity to increase money supply by 5 times more than in any other period of recession when we had the lockdowns in 2020, and that massive increase in money supply led to a burst in inflation, then to maintain very accommodative and very low rates in a period in which there was a strong recovery and coming very, very, very aggressively with big government programs that were generating higher deficit and therefore higher inflation. And then the mistakes of hiking too fast and then cutting rates also too fast in the middle of an election. All those things are not a good track record for a Fed chair. And what he should be at least aware is that it's not good for the institution either, that when he is in the middle of a legal process, whatever the outcome may be, he should not be stubbornly deciding to stay just to prove a point. I don't think that that is very professional, in my opinion.
Okay, let me ask you this. There's a term called shadow chair. What is your opinion on that? What do you think is going to be the dynamic between Powell as governor and Warsh potentially as chair?
Well, that is basically, you know, like, I don't know, it's like an uncomfortable neighbor. It's like somebody that's, what are you doing? You're going to be sort of advising the new chair on things that the new chair knows very, very well because of his incredible experience. What is it? What is all this? I find it, in my opinion, it's childish. It doesn't make any sense. The Fed has so many advisors, has so many experts. It's not just the members of the board. We're talking about so many people that are constantly giving information and giving reports about the state of the economy, etc. So it's basically almost like trying to say, I'm indispensable, and therefore you need me to guide you through a process that makes no sense, because Mr. Warsh is somebody that's perfectly capable and knows markets and knows monetary policy and the financial system upside down. He doesn't need to have somebody sort of guiding him in any shape or form.
Okay, so Daniel, just one final question here, and we have to talk about Fed independence, because that's been a narrative throughout this whole confirmation process. So Warsh was suggested by Trump as the nominee, and Trump has said he wants rate cuts. So where do you stand on this point of Fed independence with Warsh?
Let's start from the elephant in the room, with the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is that the Fed has not been independent throughout 2020 to 2024 in any shape or form. And cutting rates by 50 basis points in the middle of an election, just when the candidates had changed in the incumbents, and you had Miss Harris coming as the possible candidate for president, etc., had a very significant impact, because it is basically the Fed taking sides with the incumbent in a moment in which neither inflation nor growth nor jobs were suggesting that they had to cut rates so aggressively. And I come back to the point, just before an election. So no, the Fed has not shown its independence, and it didn't show its independence either when inflation soared in 2021, and what they did was to keep very, very loose policies just because they had to maintain the level of support for the monster increase in government spending and government deficit, when the government increased spending by $2 trillion above what was already an extraordinary expenditure of the COVID period. So the idea that now we are going to have to debate Fed independence makes no sense to me. I personally think that he will be more independent than many of previous chairs that have always erred on the side of massive government spending, massive tax hikes, and huge money printing. And I think that that is the problem, is that central banks are not independent when it comes to demand-side policies versus supply-side policies. When it comes to governments that cut taxes, that increase the private sector, and that reduce government expenditure, the Fed always takes a very surprising hawkish stance. Yet they become very dovish when you have governments that are massively increasing taxes, massively increasing spending and deficits. And I think that that is the problem. It's not that they are partisan, Republican versus Democrat. It's that the Fed tends to err on the side of statism, which is what I talk also in my book.
That's a great argument there, Daniel. Always great to speak with you. Thank you for talking with us.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You as well. The U.S. Geological Survey has found over 2.5 million tons of lithium in the Appalachian region. According to the agency, that's enough to replace over 300 years of imports. The discovery comes as the United States works to reduce reliance on China for critical minerals. A new USGS scientific paper published in Natural Resources Research shows most of that lithium concentrated in the Carolinas, with other deposits in Maine and New Hampshire. According to the agency, it's enough to power 130 million electric vehicles, 180 billion laptops, and 500 billion cell phones. Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te arrived in Eswatini for a state visit on May 2nd. This trip had been initially canceled because of interference from Beijing, which drew international criticism for its efforts to undermine the island's global standing. Taiwan is a trusted and capable partner of the United States, and Taipei's global relationships, including Eswatini, provide significant benefits. The U.S. State Department praises Lai's trip to the Southern African Kingdom. The State Department spokesperson added that every democratically elected Taiwan president has made overseas trips to visit Taiwan's diplomatic partners, and Lai's predecessor, Tsai Ing-wen, went to Eswatini in 2023 and 2018, and that this travel is routine and should not be politicized. Initially scheduled for April 22nd, Lai's trip was canceled after Taiwan claimed that China had exerted intense pressure on 3 countries, Seychelles, Mauritius, and Madagascar, to revoke overflight permits for the Taiwanese presidential aircraft. China's reaction drew international criticism, including from the U.S. State Department, the European Union, Paraguay, and more. The Interparliamentary Alliance on China, a coalition of more than 200 lawmakers worldwide, said in a statement that Lai must be free to engage with partners without interference, and that it is not for Beijing to determine the foreign policy of other countries. A Pentagon ceremony honoring 2 service members for their response to a deadly D.C. shooting, and new details about the suspect. More after this break. Stay tuned.
Looking to refresh the style in your house? Come to Mathis Home during the Spring Style event and see hundreds of options for your perfect living room. Take a look at this sectional. We can help you build it into the style you want. From sleek and modern to something more eclectic to an updated traditional look. You can also reconfigure it just by adding or removing pieces. The sofa version is a great value at just $12.89. Come find the look that's right for you at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
There's cultures that have been lost, but this culture hasn't been. The artist is showing us our sense of who we are, where we came from. You look at his hat. His hat is knitted probably by a man, because a man traditionally knitted the hats. That hat tells you the story of who this person is, what his place in the culture is, the animals around him. Everything's all contained in the messages in the hat. And the tool that he's carrying over his shoulder. This is a centuries-old tool that has been able to rework the mountains. Those traditions are invaluable, and if we don't honor those traditions, then we're rootless. The artist is showing us the value of maintaining our culture and respecting our culture.
I trod on my glasses yesterday, and I had to pay up front for a new pair that I can't even pick up for another 10 days. So I looked for another way, and I found Select Specs. I ordered online. My new glasses just arrived this morning, and I can pay over the next few weeks. This is the way to buy glasses.
See now, pay later with Select Specs. Next day delivery and deferred payment options only at selectspecs.com.
In the nation's capital, adherents of the spiritual meditation Falun Dafa are celebrating the anniversary of the practice's public introduction. Many practitioners say their lives changed dramatically by following the tenets of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. NTD Sam Wong has more from this weekend's events.
This year's May 13th will mark the 34th anniversary of Falun Dafa's public introduction. Here on the National Mall, right in front of the U.S. Capitol, Falun Gong practitioners are gathering to honor the spiritual practice and its core principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance.
It's really a day for me to reflect on the ways that my life has improved since I started practicing Falun Dafa about 26 years ago, where I got a lot more confident, got a little smarter.
I'm very thankful to the founder that he brought this to the public many, many years ago. For 25 years, I can say I have a much happier life.
Falun Dafa, also known as Falun Gong, was first introduced to the public in China on May 13, 1992. It's a traditional spiritual practice featuring moral teachings and 5 gentle meditative exercises. Each year, practitioners from around the globe celebrate this occasion as World Falun Dafa Day, giving thanks to the founder for the positive changes he has brought to their lives.
Anything that happens to me, good or bad, is a chance for me to look inside and to try to learn from it. It's really about thinking not why are difficult things happening to me, but why are these things happening and what can I learn from them and how can I advance and become a more spiritual, grounded person.
Despite being embraced worldwide, Falun Gong practitioners in China are living under severe persecution from the Chinese Communist Party. But as adversity abounds, many still choose to assimilate to the very principles they live by, even affecting those around them.
When police broke into my home trying to arrest my mom, and she escaped from the second-story balcony and injured her left hand. At that time, like more than 10 neighbors came out. They stopped the police. They asked them, why you are always arresting good people, not bad people?
Today, Falun Dafa is practiced by people in over 100 countries, reaching across class, ethnicity, and language barriers. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Sam Wong, NTD News.
2 U.S. service members are being honored for their response to a shooting in Washington, D.C. last November. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth hosted a medal ceremony today at the Pentagon's Hall of Heroes.
Major Reynolds and Stanfield, you are the essence of what General Patton called, quote, the real hero. The warrior who never lets his fear of death overpower his honor, his sense of duty to his country, and his innate manhood. Congratulations. Thank you for your courage that day. Thank you for your service to this nation. Thank you for the example that it sets to the country and to the world. When in that moment, you could have made a number of different choices. I watched the tape, everybody else watched the tape. An impossible situation, almost unforeseen, unfolding in a matter of seconds. Yes, there's training. Yes, there's instinct. There's a lot of things, but ultimately there's a choice, and you chose action.
An Afghan national is accused of opening fire near the White House last fall, killing one National Guardsman and critically wounding another. According to the Department of Homeland Security, the suspect entered the U.S. under the Biden administration's Operation Allies Welcome program. The initiative was established following the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021. According to DHS, the program granted legal status to unvetted Afghan nationals, including terrorists. The defendant faces multiple charges, including first-degree murder. A canceled flight turns into a moving tribute for a retiring airline captain. Captain John Jackson's retirement flight with Spirit Airlines was canceled after the discount carrier began shutting down Saturday. But a crew from Southwest Airlines stepped in to make sure his retirement still took off.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Jackson.
Very overwhelming. I can't thank you all enough. It's, the spirit goes down. It's kind of a sad day. And guys, thank you so much.
Jackson boarded a Southwest flight home with his son. Southwest's crew notified Baltimore Airport Fire and Rescue, which met Johnson's flight with a water cannon salute. Southwest also arranged cheers and champagne at the gate. Jackson said the team turned a sad day into an incredible moment. National Small Business Week is underway, with President Trump set to speak at a gathering of over 130 small businesses owners soon. The head of the Small Business Administration, Kelly Loeffler, telling Fox Business there's a lot to celebrate.
And we see these are the hardworking men and women. They're the ingenuity, the risk-taking that they do. It's at the heart of American enterprise that really created this country's exceptionalism 250 years ago. In fact, our founders were small businessmen. And so we're really celebrating that spirit of entrepreneurship across this country all week. And
since 1963, National Small Business Week has recognized small businesses for their critical role in the U.S. economy, creating jobs and driving innovation. Ahead of the event, the Small Businesses Administration touted a range of new pro-growth initiatives, part of President Trump's America First agenda. President Trump is expected to highlight features of the One Big Beautiful Bill passed last summer, including the small business tax deduction and working family tax cuts. The president will host over 130 business owners at the White House this afternoon. The Trump family's crypto venture suing one of its most prominent backers, the latest escalation between World Liberty Financial and crypto entrepreneur Justin Sun. More on that after this break. Stay with us.